welcome all the students and the faculty of Canvas who are present here for the series of guest lectures on awareness on COVID-19. And to have the last lecture of this series of lectures on COVID-19, we have today with us Dr. Vasumati Vedantam, who is going to talk on the black fungus or the mucormycosis, an unexpected problem of the pandemic COVID-19. So, to introduce Dr. Vasumati Vedantam is the consultant vitreoretinal surgeon and one of the medical directors of Radhatri Nethralaya Hospital in Srinagar. She has the distinction of being the alumnus of premier institutions such as Madras Medical College, Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Chennai, where she completed MBBS in MS Ophthalmology, at LV Prasad Eye Institute, Hyderabad, where she did her vitreoretinal fellowship, and Arvind Eye Hospital, Madurai, where she worked as a retina consultant for 5 years, and Moorfields Eye Hospital, London, where she did her fellowship in pediatric retina, ROP, and electrophysiology of the eye. She is a member of the All India Ophthalmic Society, Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, Andhra Pradesh State Ophthalmic Society, and Indian Women Ophthalmic Society. She is the National Task Force member in the Indian ROP Research Group for the prevention of childhood blindness due to retinopathy of prematurity in preterm babies. She is a National Task Force member of Rashtriya Bala Swasthya Karyakram of the Government of India for prevention of blindness due to cortical visual impairment in special children with cerebral palsy. She has a distinguished academic record with 15 gold medals, including the best outgoing medical student for MBBS, Lady Grant Duff Gold Medal for the best outgoing medical student, Dr. J.S. Maslamani Memorial Gold Medal for the highest mark in all university exams, and MS Ophthalmology through C.K. Kumarasamy 51st birthday commemoration gold medal for the highest marks obtained in the university examination. She is the recipient of the prestigious Rakesh Sharma Memorial Award conferred by All India Ophthalmic Society for best work in ocular trauma in India in 2005, and she has got about 48 publications in peer-reviewed national and international journals and several presentations, conferences, and symposia. Her area of expertise involves endophthalmitis, electrophysiology, pediatric retinal disorders, especially retinopathy of prematurity and ocular trauma. She has been conferred with the coveted Hanumantha Reddy Award for the best work done in pediatric ophthalmology in India. The award recognizes her exemplary work on eye infections in children. She is a member of the Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, UK, having topped the FRCC examination in 1999. Dr. Vasumati is actively involved in community work by conducting eye camps, especially in schools, eye awareness programs, etc. She is the founder and managing trustee of the public charitable trust Guru Priya Vision Research Foundation, whose motto is to eliminate all causes of preventable blindness. By means of private-public partnership between Radhatri Nethralaya and Government of Tamil Nadu, she has been carrying out free screening and treatment of over 4 lakhs preterm infants for retinopathy of prematurity, a blinding disorder, over the past 13 years in several government hospitals in Chennai, Institute of Ophthalmology, Egmore Baby Hospital, and so on. She is committed to eradication of childhood blindness, which is a big challenge in India. And she has got the experience of conducting several camps, particularly at school level. And, she is also doing a program, Safe Sight, Give Light, a series of vision screening camps along with Rotary, which is conducted every year by Dr. Vasumati, helping more than 24,000 children see better annually. So with this note, I am very, very happy to invite Dr. Vasumati Vedantam, who is also a past president of the Rotary Club of Chennai Towers, to come over and talk to us about the importance of the black fungus or the mucormycosis. Over to you, Dr. Vasumati.
Namaskaram, and thank you so much, Rotarian Dr. Shankaran and the team of Tanuvas for the kind invitation and honor. I really deem it as a pleasure to address you all and the faculty. And over the next half an hour to 40 minutes, I would be sharing my inputs on this mucormycosis or black fungus. I'll share my slides now. So, good evening, everyone. So, this is a brief overview of mucormycosis, which is basically a type of zygomycosis. It's otherwise commonly referred to, though erroneously, as what is called the black fungus. So, let us see what it is. So, what is mucormycosis? It's basically an infection, a fungal infection, which occurs in immunocompromised individuals. You're all aware that all our bodies have something called immunity, which helps us to fight infections. So that is why we don't die when we get a common cold, isn't it? So when this immunity gets compromised due to several reasons, I will be coming to that, those individuals are called immunocompromised individuals. See, mucormycosis is basically an opportunistic infection. That is, mucor is something which is ubiquitous in the environment. We see it everywhere, almost. But still, we don't fall prey to this devastating mucormycosis because our body's immunity is able to fight it. So when our body immunity gets compromised, that is when we become what is called an immunosuppressed or immunocompromised individual, then we fall prey to opportunistic infections like mucormycosis. And this infection is caused by several species of filamentous molds belonging to the order Mucorales of kingdom fungi. So there are several causative species, like since there are a lot of young veterinary doctors also, I'm being a little scientific and technical as well. Apophytomyces, Cunninghamella, Lichtenstein, Mucor, and the most common species is Rhizopus, and we have something called Rhizomycor as well. So if you see the structure of the mucor, basically you have these septate fungi, aseptate fungi, and you have this round ball-like structure at the end called sporangium, and which has a lot of sporangiospores. And it is through this inhalation of these sporangiospores that we get infected by mucor. These fungi can easily be observed in the dung. In fact, the mucor fungi is commonly referred to as the dung mold. And also on all rotting vegetable matter, basically any wet surface which is a wet soily surface, and also in old bread. And what are the predisposing factors for mucormycosis? As I told you, it occurs in basically immunocompromised individuals. So the commonest cohort of patients are patients who have uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. And India, as you're aware, is the diabetic capital of the world with the maximum number of diabetic patients throughout the world. And diabetes is a number one disease which basically reduces our immunity. So we fall prey to all kinds of infections. So uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, especially there are a cohort of patients of diabetes who take insulin. And if these patients forget to take insulin for 3 to 4 days or so, then their blood sugars may shoot up to 400 or 500, and they land up in a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a life-threatening condition. So usually mucormycosis before COVID-19 was seen in this diabetic ketoacidosis most commonly. And of course, patients who take steroids for several conditions, like there may be transplant recipients, like if you are a kidney transplant patient, then to prevent your body from rejecting the foreign kidney, your doctor would have put you on steroids. So steroids also suppress our body's immunity so that our body doesn't react against the foreign kidney. When our body's immunity gets suppressed to prevent reaction against a foreign kidney, our body's immunity also does not help us against invasion by opportunistic pathogens like mucor. So the second common predisposing factor for mucormycosis is immunosuppression by steroids and other immunosuppressive agents. And you're all aware that in COVID-19, many times to save the lives of the patients, the doctors had to resort to steroid use, which was sometimes pretty high and for long periods of time, as well as agents like tocilizumab, which also reduce the immunity of the patients to prevent cytokine storm and death in COVID-19. So you see that in COVID-19, there's a fertile area for the occurrence of mucormycosis. And another thing is steroids themselves increase our blood sugar levels. So even in patients who were not previously diabetic, following use of exogenous steroids, they usually become diabetic. So you have a nexus. You have COVID-19, diabetes, and steroids. So mucormycosis is very happy to come and take charge of the host. And also, there is also a recent speculation that COVID-19, the virus variant, especially which was found in the second wave in India, though it was detected as early as December 2020 itself, it became more prominent in the the second wave. This particular variant has been postulated by scientists to affect the beta cells of the pancreas. Now, beta cells are a special type of cells in pancreas, which is an organ in our body, which produce insulin, which keeps our blood sugar under control. So when the beta cells are destroyed, insulin is no longer produced that well. So the blood sugar levels in our body shoots up. So basically, we become a diabetic, even if we were not a diabetic before. So in fact, one of the most important post-COVID-19 morbidity conditions which lead to death, and in so many situations, you must have also been reading in the paper about people who recover from COVID-19 and suddenly pass away, is basically one of the important reasons is diabetes, fresh occurrence of diabetes post-COVID-19. And also prolonged ICU stay in which you are given many medications to keep you alive, and we really don't know what sort of interaction is happening. So you may become immunosuppressed. And comorbidities, I told you, post-transplantation. Also patients who have undergone a lot of blood transfusions previously, or malignancy, cancer patients who also receive a lot of immunosuppressives. So they are also at risk for developing mucormycosis. So these are all the predisposing factors for mucormycosis. As young doctors, all of you must know what are the predisposing factors and when to suspect. This is all information from the Ministry of Broadcasting and Information, Government of India. So when do we suspect mucormycosis? So in diabetic patients, immunosuppressed patients, and definitely in COVID-19 patients who are either having COVID-19 or have recovered from COVID-19, we should suspect mucormycosis when they encounter the following symptoms. So the most commonest presentation is sinusitis. The patient complains of nasal blockade or congestion, and there's a nasal discharge which can be blackish or even bloody, local pain on cheekbone, and many times what we find is where the patient is actually taking the oxygen. At that point, around the nostrils, you have a blackish discoloration. And the patient can also have one-sided facial pain, numbness or swelling, toothache, loosening of the teeth, jaw involvement. And coming to the eye, I'm an ophthalmologist, so I would like to talk about what happens in the eye. Many times, the eye is the presenting feature in mucormycosis, especially in COVID-19. COVID-19 patients themselves, the presenting feature could be just a plain simple conjunctivitis or Metra's eye or Kanbali, what we call as Kanbali. In addition, when they have mucormycosis, the eye will be very red and congested, and it may come, say supposing my right eye is involved, that will come in front of the left eye. So that's what we call as proptosis. And also the patient may complain of double vision. When they close each eye separately, the double vision will not be prominent. But when they open both eyes, the double vision will be very prominent. This is because the nerves which control the movements of the eyes, up, down, right, left and right, the nerves get involved when the mucormycosis invades the bone in which the eye is situated and then goes to the brain. And also patients can also present with sudden loss of vision, which the optic nerve may be compromised. Optic nerve is the nerve which connects the eye to the brain. So if that is affected, then the patient can have sudden loss of vision. And so these are the different presentations of orbital mucormycosis or ocular eye mucormycosis with eye involvement. Patient may of course have fever, skin lesions, thrombosis and necrosis, which is what we call as HR. And in fact, this black appearance is very characteristic of mucormycosis. That is why mucormycosis has been wrongly called as black fungus, because it's a misnomer, because black fungi are actually demataceous fungi, which are pigmented fungi. Mucor is not a pigmented fungus. Why then we call this as black fungus is because it's an angio-invasive fungus. Angio means blood vessel. Invasive means it invades the blood vessels. So when the blood vessel gets invaded and thrombosed, that is gets clotted, that particular area which is supplied by the blood vessel no longer receives the blood supply and the nutrition, so the area dies. So when the area dies, it looks black. So that is why it's called black fungus. And of course, in pulmonary mucormycosis, that is involvement of the lungs, you have chest pain, pleural effusion, which is accumulation of fluid around the lungs, hemoptysis, you cough out blood, or worsening of respiratory symptoms. So many times it becomes very confusing for the treating physician whether the patient has COVID-19 and that's why he is breathless, or whether the patient has mucormycosis. The treatment of the two conditions is dramatically opposite, because sometimes for some scientists what they feel that mucormycosis the increased incidence, especially in the second wave in India, could also be attributed to oxygen. Because when we give oxygen, we need to humidify the oxygen and then give, because otherwise oxygen is an irritant. Dry oxygen is an irritant to the nasal passages. So we humidify the oxygen. So supposing the water which is used to humidify the oxygen is not very clean, or we use industrial oxygen instead of medical oxygen, which again the purity may be compromised. These conditions can lead to, and India is a tropical country, a wet country, and the combination of humidity and heat, the spores just proliferate. So this is all a fertile ground, and the spores are ubiquitous in the environment, so we can easily inhale these spores and develop mucormycosis if our body is also immunosuppressed at the same time. So, as per recent reports, 70% of cases documented around the world related to mucormycosis associated with COVID-19 are from India. That is why we were in the limelight, and thankfully, hopefully, we are off the peak of the hill now when it comes to mucormycosis at the second wave. So, coming to types of mucormycosis, as I told you, you have rhinocerebral. Rhino means nose, cerebral means brain. Rhinocerebral mucormycosis, it basically starts as an infection in the sinuses and the nasal passages and spreads to the brain. And you have predominantly pulmonary mucormycosis. Pulmonary means lungs, so it usually affects the lungs of cancer patients or patients who have undergone transplants, so on and so forth. Then gastrointestinal mucormycosis, which occurs in patients who are exposed to excessive antibiotics, so the normal gut microbiome is lost. For patients who have undergone extensive intestinal resections, surgery, or certain other alternative medicines, which we have not yet understood. So that's a special type called gastrointestinal mucormycosis. In fact, mucormycosis in dogs is predominantly gastrointestinal and cutaneous. Cutaneous is the other type of mucormycosis in which it enters through the skin, and in patients with weakened immune systems. And on prolonged contact, it can actually spread to another patient also, though it is not contagious usually. And disseminated mucormycosis, when the infection just spreads via the bloodstream from one part of the body to another, and usually, invariably, it's fatal. And in COVID-19 situation, in the second wave in India, we saw a lot of ROCM, or rhino-orbital cerebral mucormycosis, most common in patients with diabetic ketoacidosis, in which the sinuses, the nasal passages, O is orbit, the bone which houses the eyes, the brain, cerebral, everything is involved. So the symptoms are, of course, fever, headache, sinus or nasal congestion, unilateral facial swelling, the black lesions which I described, either on the nasal bridge or on the nostrils, on the inside of the mouth, or proptosis, which is protrusion of the eyeball, double vision or diplopia, loss of vision or red eye. So basically, many of our patients were on home treatment, home quarantine, and also treatment at home with COVID-19 patients. So in those situations, the doctors sometimes had to give them dexamethasone, oral dexamethasone, which is a steroid. So these patients should basically watch out for the appearance of black lesions on their nostrils, or black discharge, or any unusual respiratory symptom, or any unusual increase in fever, and or red eye, or double vision. Like they can close each eye separately when they get up and then check their vision also. They need not panic, but these are things which we routinely tell all of our patients to do a checkup, to be aware of their body. Basically, we all need to be aware of our own body so that we can pick up any small issues immediately ourselves. So it's a good process to follow. So similarly, COVID-19 patients or patients who have recovered need not get perturbed unduly. We are just past the peak, but still it's good for them to know about all these things, so that at the earliest hint of any such symptom, they can seek immediate consultation, so that their vision as well as their life can be saved. And nowadays, doctors are also very well aware of this complication, so they do not hesitate to swing into action immediately. And the other type is pulmonary mucormycosis, in which we have difficulty in breathing, which we call as dyspnea. This is for the veterinary doctors. A shortness of breath, chest pain, fever more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, coughing, which produces blood, that is hemoptysis, or dark fluids, dark black colored fluid comes out when we cough. So this is also very bad prognosis, usually unless aggressively treated patients invariably die. And gastrointestinal mucormycosis is common in young children, especially low birth weight and premature babies. They can have nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and gastrointestinal bleeding. In cutaneous mucormycosis, here's a photograph of that. The fungus enters the body through the damaged skin, and interestingly, it's common among people who are not immunocompromised. And they work in unclean environments for a long time. And symptoms of facial pain, in case it occurs in the face, swelling, you can get a small bubble on the skin which exudes serum, or it can break, and there can be discontinuity in the skin, which we call as an ulcer, as seen there. It can look black because of the angio-invasion of the fungus. And then later on, it can proceed to infection of sinuses, so on and so forth. Disseminated mucormycosis, invariably the brain gets affected, and then it can spread through the blood, and any other organ basically can get affected. And patients who have other comorbid conditions and are very sick, it happens in that, and it's a devastating final nail to the coffin, so to say, in which patients invariably don't recover at all. And if the orbital symptoms, the disseminated mucormycosis sometimes may just present with non-specific symptoms like a swollen eyelid or paralysis of eyelid muscles, and when we do the MRI, everything is revealed. So, mode of transmission. So, it's very important for us to understand that the main mode in immunocompromised patients like COVID-19 is inhalation of sporangiospores or spores from the air or the environment, or from the oxygen which has mixed through the unclean water or industrial oxygen. And ingestion, or rarely you can even ingest the spore and lead to gastrointestinal mucormycosis, or inoculation from wounds of trauma after prolonged contact. And the nosocomial outbreaks in the hospitals associated with contaminated badges is also very rare, especially contaminated ventilation equipment, medical equipment, rare. But we are postulating that to be a cause in COVID-19 second wave also, the reasons already discussed. And basically the mode of transmission of fungi from one individual to the other depends on site and severity of the infection. And this we've already discussed. Rhinocerebral mucormycosis by inhalation of spores or droplet infection, just like COVID, just like the coronavirus. And cutaneous mucormycosis is by close personal contact. So how do we diagnose this condition? Histopathological staining of specimens. We take biopsies of the black HR, not only just the black HR, but the nearby healthy tissue biopsy has to be taken. And hematoxylin eosin, H&E is hematoxylin eosin, or methanomen silver stains of biopsies show broad aseptate hyaline hyphae. You can see the ground glass appearance of the hyphae. Those lines there, they don't have any septae, and they can branch at acute angles, as you can see. And we also do a lactophenol cotton blue bound, LPC bound of colonies, which is the same thing you're seeing. And basically, we have something called a rhizoid, which occurs in a fungus, which is a unique root-like growth, which arises from the hyphae. So for each type of species, the rhizoid is different. For a rhizopus, it's a nodal rhizoid. For Lichtenstein, it's an internal rhizoid, and mucor rhizoids are absent, as is seen here. The one to the right is the mucor, in which there is no rhizoid, and this is Lichtenstein, wherein you have an internodal rhizoid, and Rhizopus is the one on the left, wherein you have beautiful nodal individual rhizoids. So how do we reduce the risk of mucormycosis? There are certain tools. We have to control the hyperglycemia, monitor the blood glucose level post-COVID-19 discharge, and especially if the patient was a diabetic prior to the occurrence of COVID-19. It's very, very important that the blood sugar levels are perfectly controlled, and the steroids have to be used absolutely judiciously. We saw the instances several times in which patients started using dexamethasone on their own accord when they were at home just because of panic. So steroids have to be used only if absolutely essential. The physician should be the one to decide that. Correct timing, correct dosage, and correct duration. And for humidifiers during oxygen therapy, clean, sterile water has to be used, and judicious use of antibiotic and antifungals, because just as injudicious use, widespread use of antibiotics has resulted in antibiotic resistance, so that the common antibiotics no longer work against the common pathogens. We need superbugs. We have superbugs, so we need super antibiotics like that. For fungal infection like mucor also, injudicious use of too many antifungals has led to the emergence of resistance. So we may get superbugs, super mucors, and so on and so forth. It's a scary scenario. So just keeping you informed, we have to use antibiotics and antifungals judiciously. And there are certain don'ts. Please do not miss warning signs and symptoms, but don't panic. Do not consider all cases of blocked nose as cases of bacterial sinusitis. It could be fungal sinusitis. So the patients may need FES. And do not hesitate to seek aggressive investigations and histopathology reports to detect and rule out a fungal etiology, because we will lose crucial time otherwise. Because the crux of the thing is we should not lose crucial time to initiate treatment for mucormycosis. So basically, treatment is a multi-step approach. You need a reversal of the underlying conditions. You have to identify what is the predisposing thing and get a grip on that, whether it is COVID-19 or diabetic ketoacidosis, whatever it is, get a grip on that on one hand. And early administration of antifungal agents at optimal doses on the second hand. And third is surgery, which you do a debridement and remove all the infected tissue. Sometimes we have been forced to remove the orbit and the eyeball, which is called excenteration, to preserve the life of the patient. Though the eye is gone, the patient at least lives, so to tell the story. And in the case of nasal passages or the jaw, the tooth and all that, the infected tissues have to be debrided. It's by a combination of ENT, ophthalmology and maxillofacial and the facial surgeons. And the drug of choice is, of course, amphotericin B, because other new medicines like voriconazole, the species, especially the Moreus species, can be resistant to that. So with the maximum dose of 1.5 milligram per kg total daily dose, it's actually, we have to give it very, very carefully, because it causes a lot of problems and it's highly nephrotoxic. So we need to give it very carefully. Alternatively, we can try triazoles like posaconazole, isavuconazole, itraconazole, and terbinafine also can be tried in case amphotericin B is not available freely, as was the situation some time back. And surgeries, I've already told, is not just the removal of necrotic tissues, but also the surrounding infected healthy tissues might be required to prevent the spread of infection. So to summarize, 3 important carry-home points for all of you young doctors. The term black fungus is a misnomer, it's already told. So, and in fact, we can even be accused of being racist. So it's because the fungus as such is not black. It's because of the black necrotic tissue due to its angioinvasive property that, the pathology which it causes looks black, hence it's called black fungus. So it's a misnomer. So mucormycosis is not contagious, so you don't have to run away from a patient who is suspected to be mucormycosis if your immunity is good. It's only the cutaneous variant which can get transmitted, and that too by prolonged contact. So be rest assured. There's another point, and for the benefit of the young veterinary doctors and faculty of Tanuvas, mucormycosis is definitely a problem reported in dogs. I'm sure you're aware of that. So especially when a dog goes out and plays in a lot of wet soil and is with prolonged contact, its paws especially, that's the first place of contact, or rarely by droplet infection. The skin gets affected of the dogs, and also if it eats the spores, then we get gastrointestinal symptoms with gastrointestinal bleeding, stomachache, and then it can be fatal as well. So it may, of course, veterinary surgeons have a lot of index of suspicion when it comes to mucormycosis in dogs. I would be personally interested in knowing from the faculty of Tanuvas and Dr. Shankaran whether they saw a hike in the mucormycosis in COVID-19 second wave in dogs. So thank you very much for your patient listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and also interact with all of you. So thank you very much for the privilege. Thank you once again. I'll stop sharing slides.
Yes, please. You can stop sharing it. Yeah. Dr. Vasumati, actually, you can just look into the chat box, or can I read it for you, the questions?
Yeah, I will look into the chat box. There are 3 questions I can see. Why is there discrimination of green fungus Asian fungus? See, it's actually, I think it's all basically we have to blame the media for creating all this confusion. We are all doctors, so we should talk scientifically, and we all know what is white fungus, candida and all that. There's even yellow fungus, and we should actually look at those colors. They are wrong adjectives. So in fact, that's why I repeatedly stressed the term black fungus itself is a misnomer. So we should stick to scientific terms. and there's no real discrimination as such between fungus elephantis, white fungus. It's just that this Mucor species happens to be ubiquitous in the environment and is there in especially in a hot, humid country like India. And when COVID-19 second wave struck with a new variant, virus variant, like both of them became friends immediately, and then boom, we had the pandemic of COVID-19 and the epidemic of mucormycosis. So there's no such discrimination as such. Let's stick to scientific terms. I hope I've answered your question. And second question was, what are the side effects of amphotericin B? Okay, as I told you, the most important side effect of amphotericin B is nephrotoxicity. That's all that mainly we need to know. Of course, it's toxic to all the body structures, all the body organs. So that's why we have to give it as a very, very slow IV infusion. First, initially we have to give a test dose that the patient tolerates. Then we give it as a very slow IV infusion for 20 minutes, and then monitor the patient over the next 2 to 3 hours, and then keep monitoring the serum creatinine and all that to make sure the kidney doesn't become a problem. And that is why it is better to use the other variant formulations of amphotericin B, which are not so, like the liposomal varieties, which are not so toxic to the body. And I hope I've answered your question. Then this question from Mahalakshmi Ramesh. Universal blood donors has less risk of getting COVID and mucormycosis. It's a myth or a true study? I'm sorry, I don't think I have enough scientific information on that to answer that question. I know that COVID-19 happens when we receive multiple transfusions, but I'm sorry, mucormycosis happens when we receive multiple transfusions. That was the pre-COVID-19 era. We don't know how it's going to change now, but I don't know whether you being a universal blood donor actually protects you against all this. But whatever it is, it's a very good ethical practice to follow, to donate blood and save lives. So I can always look into that, but to the best of my knowledge, there is no such scientific publication. Thank you, Dr. Kamaraj sir, for your comments regarding the presentation. And regarding the medical management, which one do you decide to use, amphotericin B or the others? Yeah. So the drug of choice, the gold standard is amphotericin B. There's absolutely no doubt about it because it's broad spectrum and it's fungicide. It kills the fungi. Whereas if it's not available, then or the patient cannot tolerate amphotericin B because he's very sick or he is a dialysis patient, then we cannot give the patient amphotericin B. That would be just hastening his progress to the grave. So in those situations, we go on to the newer triazole antifungals, which I mentioned. But otherwise, the drug of choice is amphotericin B. There's no doubt about it. And are there, Mr. Selvaraj has asked, how, I think I missed that question.
Can I read it for you?
Are there earlier? No, I got it. Are there any cases earlier before COVID in immunocompromised patients in Tamil Nadu? Yes, but very rare, very rare. Throughout India, very, very rare. We have had cases, and in fact, even when I was doing my post-graduation ophthalmology, we've seen of the orbit. So it does happen, especially as I told you in diabetic ketoacidosis. So how long amphotericin B has to be given to patients? It's as long as the infection is there. So we really don't know. We've had sometimes a week or 2 weeks or even a month. It's difficult to say. Different patients, it's a different scenario. As long as the infection is there, we have to treat. There's no other way to save the life of the patient. What makes COVID-19 patients more susceptible to mucormycosis infection? This we already discussed, but I don't mind repeating. One is COVID-19 makes the patient immunosuppressed per se. Any viral infection, especially any debilitating viral infection, you feel very weak after a flu, isn't it? Even after you recover. That's because your body immunity is very less, your energy levels are very low. So if there is a second intercurrent infection, you fall prey to it immediately. And mucormycosis is basically an opportunistic infection. That is, nama nalla irukka varaikkum it will not do anything to us. But the minute we are down, it will hit us. So COVID-19 is one such situation, number one. Number two, scientists feel that the COVID-19 second wave was caused by a variant which affects and destroys the beta cells of the pancreas, which produce insulin. So naturally, even if you were not diabetic, you become diabetic. diabetic, your blood sugar levels soar. In fact, I've seen some of my close friends who are not diabetic, treatment physicians, they had blood sugar levels of 400 after coming back home after undergoing COVID-19 treatment. Naturally, your doctor needs to use steroids and other immunosuppressives, so which again increases your immunocompromised level, so you fall prey to mucormycosis. Plus, steroids are diabetogenic. The steroids themselves increase your blood sugar levels. Plus, on top of that, this variant destroys the beta cells of pancreas. The speculation is not completely proved, so you fall prey to an opportunistic infection. Plus, on one hand, we had oxygen shortage, which and also like industrial oxygen we had to use, humidification of oxygen with impure water, so the spores could have found their way there and right into our nostrils of unsuspecting patients. Is a different, many reasons. Like most of these are from the Government of India website. So this is not speculation, definitely, but 100% robust scientific evidence is not there to say that this is the reason why we had so many cases. But then maybe it's a combination, a culmination of all the factors acting in concert together. So, Mr. Naveen Kumar, I hope I've answered your question. And main source of mucormycosis for any patient, either COVID positive or negative, I think you are referring to from where it comes. It's from the environment, basically. And from does it reach the environment? It's commonly dung. We have plenty in India, and wet places, soiled places, and so on and so forth. Plenty of unhygienic conditions, and people living in unhygienic conditions. And when our immunity is compromised, we just fall prey to that. Mr. Selvaraj from Namakkal has asked, any alternate modern drug which can be an alternate to amphotericin? Will amphotericin become resistant to Mucor if used for long time? Yeah, Mucor can become, that is the thing. Like basically, one of the reasons some scientists speculate that mucormycosis can occur in patients is patients who have received a lot of a drug called antifungal called voriconazole. Just as I told you, we have many of the common bacterial agents have become resistant to the common antibiotics that we use. So every time nowadays, to tackle even a common bacterial infection, our doctors have to prescribe higher order antibiotics, because all of us in the community have become resistant to the common antibiotics, and this resistance has led to the emergence of what are called superbugs, which is a big problem nowadays. So that is why all the pharmaceutical companies are on the race to discover more and more newer antibiotics, stronger antibiotics. So it's like a vicious cycle. So it's a never-ending race. So and the only people who are happy are the pharmaceutical companies, not the patients. So similar scenario exists in fungal infections. So we have this common basic antifungal. So when we avoid this, sidestep this, and go on to higher antifungals, even though an ordinary antifungal, the basic one, can work, then we are, promoting the incidence of resistance amongst the fungi. So the fungi also become super fungal. So then again it becomes a vicious cycle. Like what we are facing in bacterial infections, same thing we have been facing in fungal infections also. So you are right. So we should always start with the basic drug. And amphotericin has been there for so many years now, and it's still the gold standard, luckily. Why? Because we have not been using it that extensively. Because number one, mucormycosis was not that rampant a problem. Number two, amphotericin B has got serious side effects, so which prevented us from using it left and right. So that has what has actually helped us now. It's ironic, but that is what has helped us now, because the fungi have not yet become resistant to amphotericin B. For example, this particular species is resistant to a very good antifungal called voriconazole. So we are not able to use that drug, voriconazole, which is a pretty safe antifungal in mucormycosis patients. We have to rely on higher triazole antifungals, which I had mentioned. So I think I've answered all the questions in the chat box. Is mucormycosis basically non-pathogenic? Yeah, what you mean to ask is does it affect each and every person? Yeah, the answer is no. It's something which is commonly seen. If you take dung with your bare hands, you will find mucor. Put it under the microscope, you'll find mucor. Any stale bread, usually one variety of mucor thing may be there in that. So it's like ubiquitous in the environment. The air that you're currently inhaling, despite the N95 mask, may still have spores. So if we just keep ourselves healthy, our immunity alive and kicking, and a positive attitude, I think we will not fall prey to opportunistic infections. The idea of having such talks, and I thank Chanuvas for organizing one such thing, is not to make people panic and then go into a knee-jerk reaction. It's just to increase our awareness so that we can fight this virus. Can we take COVID-19 as the culprit for the black fungus? For the mucormycosis epidemic that we are facing now, definitely the COVID-19 pandemic is the culprit, but not for the mucormycosis that we have been seeing for generations. For that, the primary culprit is the immunocompromised status of the individual, especially diabetes.
I think, thank you, Dr. Vasamati. You answered to most of the queries that has come on the chat box, and thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation. I think you have taken time in spite of your busy schedule, made it possible to have this presentation, and you have told many of our students and the faculty here on the basics of mucormycosis. It's a kind of refresher for most of the students and the faculty here, and also the precautions that we need to take as veterinary graduates or as veterinarians, as well as people who are involved in the community service. We need to be more aware of this mucormycosis, also to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much, and it's really very good to be here from all of us. And on behalf of the IDP team of Danwas, we would like to thank you. This program is supported by the World Bank through ICAR, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and your presence here made it more meaningful for our students and faculty to understand much aware on the problem of the COVID-19 and its consequences. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Take
care and stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.